project that I'm going to show you guys how to do today is called a tessellation. A tessellation just means for something to fit together and have no gaps in between. So you can see here I've got a tessellation of some fish. They fit together perfectly. There's no gaps in between, kind of like a tile floor in your bathroom or your kitchen. It's really easy to do. It looks hard, but I promise it'll be no problem at all. For this project, you're going to need a pair of scissors, a pencil. I have a square of paper that I've cut. Mine is 3 inches by 3 inches. That's why I have my ruler here. I use my ruler to measure out my square. You can make this really any size you want. I find 3 inches is pretty good. You can also do 4 inches by 4 inches. If you have an index card at home, you can really easily cut that into a 4-inch square and that'll work fine. I also have a roll of tape and I have a marker, but this is really part of my coloring pack. If you have markers or colored pencils, that is great for this project, but you can use whatever coloring materials you have on hand. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this square that I have and I'm going to turn it into a really interesting shape, but I'm going to cut it and put it together in a way that will tessellate. So here's an example of one I made earlier. This one is a flying frog because why not? But this shape started out just like a square like this one, and I have cut it and put it together in a way that I know it will fit together like a puzzle. So there are a few rules when you're doing this so that it'll turn out properly, but I'll walk you through them right now. We're going to be cutting and retaping 2 sides of the square. The sides that we cut have to be side by side. They cannot be across from each other, so I like to do one side at a time. For my first side, I like to draw from one corner to the other. I cannot draw to the next side of my square. It has to be from one corner to the other. So I'm going to go ahead and just draw any kind of shape I want. I'm going to try and make sure that my shape isn't too crazy. I want to make sure that I can cut it out with my scissors pretty easily. So there's my first shape. You can see nothing too skinny or too zigzaggy about it. So I'm going to go ahead and take my scissors and cut this right out. I also want to make sure my shape isn't too small because then it won't really change my square very much. So I'm going to cut out this shape here. Alright, there we go. So my shape came from here. So another rule about this, I'm sorry for all the rules, but when we tape this back together, I have to make sure I tape it in a certain way. I'm going to make sure it goes directly across from where I cut it from. So that means I cannot flip it like this. So you can see that these don't match up anymore. So I can't have that. It needs to stay the same direction. I also can't tape it off to the side at all. It has to go directly across. And this matters, especially when we have ones that don't take up the whole side of the square. So I'm going to go ahead and take a piece of tape. And I like to put the tape on the piece that I cut out and line it up and tape it. I'm really looking at the corners and see where they match up from where I cut it. I'm going to go ahead and secure that a little more with an extra piece. Alright, there we go. So the first side's done. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to turn it, and it doesn't matter which side I cut out next. It can be either side as long as it's not this one here. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to take my pencil, and I'm going to draw another shape here. I'm going to try and make sure not to get too close to my edge here because I don't want this to be too fragile when I cut it out. So I'm going to go ahead and draw another shape and cut that out as well. And you can see how I drew over my tape. That's no big deal. If you draw over your tape, it's not a problem at all. Okay, there we go. So there's my shape. It was like this, so that means I have to keep it the same way. I cannot flip it over like this and move it. Got to be exactly as it was, and this is a case where my shape is smaller than the side I cut it out from, so that means I can't put it over here. I lined it up with this corner here, so I'm going to make sure when I tape it, it goes right here as well. Alright, so there we go. So I like to flip my piece over so I'm not looking at the tape, I'm just looking at the shape. So I can turn this any direction I want now and try and see what it looks like, and I can turn it into anything I want. When I did this flying frog here, I turned all different directions before I settled on what it was, and I really love this project because it really kind of surprises me every time. So like when I look at this way, it kind of looks like a house with smoke coming out of the chimney, or if I turn it this way, I'm not sure what it looks like this way. If I go this direction, oh man, I just don't know. I just keep turning around until I see something that, you know, I like. If I put it this way, for me, I always see fish and birds when I draw. So this one really looks like a fish to me. If I put a great big eyeball here, and I like to sketch out what my project is first before I draw it. So there's his little fish lips there. Maybe I'll put in like a nice big gill and the fin. And then maybe I'll put like a little fin here. Maybe I'll put some polka dots on my fish. There we go. So I'm not going to worry about this piece too much here. It becomes part of the fish. The fish is going to look like it's going to overlap. You can kind of already see here how the mouth would fit on this side and how the fin would fit on this side. So it's going to fit together like a puzzle. So I have my drawing paper ready. You can see it's just a regular size sheet of drawing paper. You can do this as big or as crazy as you want. And I could put this anywhere to start, but I'm going to make sure that my first one is easy for me to trace the whole thing. Now it's going to be a lot of tracing, but it gets a lot easier because once the first one's done, the next one that you draw will be half traced already. I like to take a little roll of tape like this and put it on the back because it makes it easier to trace so it doesn't move around on you. So I'm going to just stick that right there and take my pencil and trace my first shape here. I'm just going to take my time. This is the hardest one to trace. I think my pencil's on the verge of breaking. That's okay. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and peel this up. And I've got my first shape there. So when I take my puzzle piece, I can set it, and you'll see how it fits together, or it should fit together perfectly. If it doesn't fit together right, that means you may have taped it, incorrectly, and that's not a big deal. You could just try again. So you can pick any one of these sides to trace next. So I'm going to do this one. I'm going to line it right up, press it down with my tape, and you can see I don't really have to trace this side at all right now because I already drew it. I just have to trace the other sides. You can see how this will go much faster once the first one's done. All right, so second one is done. I'm going to make sure I go straight off the edge of the paper. So even though this one doesn't fit, I'm going to draw what I can. And keep going. So I'm just going to go ahead and fill up my paper completely. This is all traced. I can start filling in my details for what I want this to look. Now I kind of did a plan here on my little template, but I don't have to stick to that because it's just a sketch. I can make them as different as I want. I could do these in a pattern, or I could make them all the same. It's up to me. So I think I'm going to start in the center and make the one that I have in the middle just like the one that I have now. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of sketch in my details. Put in my fin. I think I'm going to do a pattern of sorts. So I think I'm going to make my next fish kind of angry. I'll have angry fish and kind of surprise fish the whole way through. I think I'm going to make this guy's fins a little bit more sharp. And even if I can't see the whole fish, I'm going to draw what I can. So if I know that I would see, like part of the dots here, or maybe like the fin here, I'd put them in there. This is my final piece after I added color to it. I just used colored pencils. I can't wait to see what you guys make. I'm looking forward to it. Go ahead and upload it to Artsonia or send me an email.